Did you have an opportunity in your lifetime to be a professional? Did you think about quitting? See, you don't quit it, and you don't quit in sports. You retire. You don't get to quit. It's not an option. See, someone told me that a long time ago. That ain't even an option. And the person told me that, he ain't here anymore. He died. This is what's great about sports. This is what the greatest thing about sports is. You play to win the game. Hello? You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it. That's the great thing about sports. You play to win. And I don't care if you don't have any wins. You go play to win. When you start telling me it doesn't matter, then retire.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode of the Randall Handles Football Podcast. I am your host, Randall Tivas. Now, before we get started with today, just want to remind everybody, please subscribe, show some support. If you like what you're hearing, then there's no reason not to, and you'll get all the notifications when these videos do drop and when my podcasts do come out. So, again, please subscribe. Now, today I want to preview the AFC North. The AFC North is home to the former AFC champion, the team with the best record in the AFC from the previous year, the Baltimore Ravens. The AFC North also has the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Cleveland Browns, and the Cincinnati Bengals, the last team of which had the number one overall pick in this year's NFL draft, and of course selected quarterback Joe Burrow out of LSU. We'll get more into that in a little bit later. I want to start off with, let's go ahead and talk about your Baltimore Ravens. So the Ravens had a relatively quiet offseason. They had their all-pro offensive guard, Marshall Yanda, retire from the league. He spent the past 13, 15 years with the Ravens. It is unfortunate that he couldn't have been a part of one last Super Bowl team. However, he had been in the league, he had his due time, so it was pretty much time for him to go ahead and retire. They also traded away former first-round pick tight end Hayden Hurst to the Atlanta Falcons for, I believe it was a fifth-round pick. Of course, they are really stacked at the tight end position already, having Pro Bowl tight end Mark Andrews as well. Their first pick in the NFL draft in the first round, the Ravens selected linebacker Patrick Queen. I think that they finally found their replacement. Historically, ever since the Ravens came into existence, I believe it was in 1999, 1998, somewhere around there, they've always had a very dominant defense. Of course, anchored by, Hall of Famer Ray Lewis and middle linebacker. And after Ray Lewis retired, they had linebacker C.J. Mosley in the middle. And so I believe that this pick with Patrick Queen is their attempt to replace the void left when Ray Lewis retired and C.J. Mosley left via free agency the past offseason to the New York Jets. So I think this pick is going to do them a lot of good. In addition, they brought in interior lineman Calais Campbell from the Jacksonville Jaguars. And in the second round of the NFL draft, they selected J.K. Dobbins, a running back who I think will fit in very well with what the Ravens do. They like to run the ball, of course, with Lamar Jackson, setting the NFL record in most rushing yards by a quarterback last season. They have Mark Ingram. So I think picking a running back here, someone who's durable, who's young, can handle a big load, that is a good pickup by them. So I think all in all, the Ravens had a relatively quiet offseason, which is good in returning most of your players from your fantastic team last season. Unfortunately, they did lose in the first round of the playoffs last year. So I believe that they set their hopes even higher this year. They're hoping to reach the Super Bowl. And I think that they will be a good team this year. And I think that they do have a valid reason to set their sights on a Super Bowl team this year. As far as their schedule goes, week 1, they open up against the Cleveland Browns. Now, last year, there was a lot of hype surrounding this Cleveland Browns team with the additions of Odell Beckham Jr., Kareem Hunt, amongst others. There was a lot of hype around this Cleveland Browns team, and they really did not live up to the hype. They were the darling pick to make it to the Super Bowl last year, and last season was a big bust for them. I do expect the Browns will turn it around this season, and they actually will be fighting for a playoff position this season. So again, the Ravens open up at home against the Browns, and they lose this game. Shocker, stunner. Do the Browns have something making this year? Quite possibly. Like I said, I believe so. Week 1, the Browns actually come away with a victory in Baltimore. And so the Ravens start their season 0-1 before traveling to Houston to take on Deshaun Watson and the Texans and winning this game. The following week, they host the Kansas City. They host the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, the reigning Super Bowl champions, and they win this game on Monday Night Football. The following week, they travel to Washington to play the Redskins, and they win this game as well. And in week 5, they host the Cincinnati Bengals. Like I said, they have rookie quarterback Joe Burrow. No question, no doubt, he will be the starting quarterback week 1, barring an injury, for the Cincinnati Bengals. I think that the Ravens do beat the Bengals in week 5 as well. So through 5 weeks, I have the Ravens at a record of 4 wins and 1 loss. Again, their 1 loss coming week 1 against the Browns. Week 6, they travel to Philadelphia to take on Carson Wentz and the Eagles, and they drop this game as well, moving to a record of 4 wins and 2 losses before they do go on a nice winning streak. The following week, week 7, they host the Pittsburgh Steelers, their division rivals, their hated rivals. They beat the Steelers in week 7. Week 8 is their bye week. Of course, no games in week 8 for them. Week 9, they travel to Indianapolis to take on the Colts, where they win this game as well. Week 10, they visit Foxborough to take on the Patriots on Sunday Night Football, and they win this game as well. Week 11, they host the Tennessee Titans in a rematch of last year's playoff games, in which Derrick Henry ran for, I believe it was like $180 against the Ravens. They avenged that playoff loss, and they beat the Tennessee Titans in week 11 to improve to a record of 8 wins and 2 losses. So through 11 weeks, they have 2 losses, 8 wins. You're feeling really good as a Ravens fan. Like I said, I think this is going to be a great season for them. Week 12 is where they get their next loss, and they actually they have a string of 2 straight losses. So again, on Thanksgiving, Thursday Night Football against the Pittsburgh Steelers, they dropped that game at Heinz Field. The following week, they host the Dallas Cowboys, and the Cowboys, this is on Thursday Night Football as well. They host the Cowboys. They drop this game as well, moving to a record of 8 wins and 4 losses through week 13, before finishing their season on a winning streak. The next 4 games at Cleveland on Monday Night Football, they win that game. Home against Jacksonville Jaguars, week 15, they win. Home against the New York Giants, they get that win as well. And finishing the season at Cincinnati, taking on again quarterback Joe Burrow and the Bengals, and they win that game as well. So all in all, I have the Ravens at finishing with a record of 12 wins and 4 losses. Again, not too bad. If you were a playoff team last year who was really fighting for that to go to a Super Bowl, I think this year is going to be a really successful season for the Ravens as well. So that brings us to the next team in the AFC North, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think for the Steelers, their season really comes down to the health of Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger went down with an injury last week. I believe it was in week 2, and missed the entire season. And even with the absence of Roethlisberger, they were fighting for that last playoff spot. I believe they finished with a record of either 8-8 or 9-7. So they were right there. You'd have to expect with a healthy Roethlisberger that they're right there in the thick of the playoffs again as well. So of course they had inconsistent quarterback play. They had a rotation from Mason Rudolph to Duck Hodges, it really was a mess last year. Okay, we all remember, I believe it was Thursday Night Football or Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football. It's one of those primetime games. Myles Garrett gets into a big fight with Mason Rudolph, takes off his helmet and clubs Rudolph over the head with his helmet. Scary stuff. Yeah, I wouldn't expect any of that stuff to happen this year with the Pittsburgh Steelers with the return of Roethlisberger. Some other things that happened this offseason, in the first round of the NFL draft, they brought in, the second round, right? They traded away their first round pick to the Miami Dolphins last season for safety Minkah Fitzpatrick. So with their second pick, they brought in wide receiver Chase Claypool. In the offseason, they also brought in tight end Eric Ebron from the Indianapolis Colts, and signed an interior lineman, Stefan Wisniewski, if that's how you say it. So I think really the Steelers are bringing back their core. They're ready to run it back. They're going to have a healthy James Conner. They should have a fired up, ready to go Juju Smith-Schuster. So I think the Steelers are going to have a decent season. I don't think they're going to be, searching for a Super Bowl, but I definitely do think that they will have a playoff spot secured by the end of the season. So all in all, it'll be a good rebound season for the Steelers. Okay. So the Steelers open up week 1 at New York Giants on Monday Night Football. No surprise here, but I have the Steelers winning this first game of the season against the Giants, as well as winning the next 2. Week 2, they host the Denver Broncos, where they win this game as well. And in week 3, they host the Houston Texans, and they get a victory against Deshaun Watson and the Texans as well. So through 3 weeks, I have them undefeated with a record of 3-0, sitting atop their division, before dropping their next game, week 4, in Tennessee against the Titans. Again, I said it before, Derrick Henry, he's a beast. Expect him to run wild this game if they actually want a chance to win. So I have the Titans winning in week 4. In week 5, the Steelers host the Philadelphia Eagles, and they win this game as well. Week 6, they host the Cleveland Browns at Heinz Field, and they win this game as well, before dropping their next 2 games. Week 7 in Baltimore, I have them losing. Week 8, of course, is their bye week, along with the Ravens. And in week 9, they travel to Dallas to take on the Cowboys, and I have them dropping this game as well. So through 8 games, I have them sitting at a record of 5 wins and 3 losses. Again, like I said, definitely not where they were last season when they started out the season. I think it was like 0-4, 0-5, something like that, and still finished out strong and almost made the playoffs. So they're sitting right where they want to be. They're in the driver's seat as we hit the back half of the season. Week 10, they play host to the Cincinnati Bengals, where they win this game. Week 11, they travel to Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars, and they win that game as well. Week 13, they host the Baltimore Ravens on Thanksgiving on Thursday, and I have them winning this game in front of a primetime TV on Thanksgiving. The following week, week 13, they host the Washington Redskins, and they win that game. No, sorry. Surprise, stunner, dun, dun, dun. I have them losing to the Washington Redskins. I know what you guys are probably thinking, like, wait, how can a playoff team lose to a team like the Redskins? Well, there's always upsets. There's always crazy things that happen. Sometimes the Steelers do play down to their competition. And I think this is just one of those games where the Redskins do actually pull out a victory against a playoff team. And I have this starting a bit of a downward trend for the Steelers. So like I said, week 13, I have them losing to the Redskins. Week 14 against the Bills, I have them losing. And week 15 in Cincinnati on Monday Night Football, I have them losing as well. Okay, so they have a 3-game losing streak before finishing the season on an upwards note. Week 16, they host the Indianapolis Colts, and they win. Week 17, they travel to Cleveland with a playoff spot on the line, and they win that game as well. Okay. So all in all, I have the Steelers finishing with a record of 9 wins and 7 losses. Now, wait, I thought you said that they were going to have a good season. I thought you said they were going to make the playoffs. I think that this will be good enough to make the playoffs. And who knows, maybe ultimately they do beat the Redskins and they finish with a record of 10-6. So, I have them finishing in that wild card spot, definitely behind the Ravens. But do making the playoffs. Okay, squeaking in as a wild card team, probably against one of those other up and coming teams. I don't know. The Colts probably will be fighting for a spot. The Bills definitely will be winning their division. I don't know. The Patriots, they kind of seem like a bit of a wild card to me. I'm still trying to decide how I think the Patriots will finish their season. If they'll be good, if they'll be okay, if they'll be at the bottom. I guess you guys will just have to wait to see until that episode drops. So now this brings us to the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Dookie Browns. Unfortunately for the Browns, they haven't made it to the playoffs in quite a while. And even when they do make it to the playoffs, they really don't have a lot of success. They've never won a Super Bowl. I think that, along with the Steelers, they will be fighting for that wild card position. I think the Browns will have a much better season this year than they did last year when they finished with 6 wins and 10 losses, and they had head coach Freddie Kitchens fired. Out goes Kitchens, and in comes the offensive coordinator from the Minnesota Vikings that I think will be a lot better, has a lot more experience than what Freddie Kitchens had. Okay. So again, I think the Browns did a lot of the right things in the offseason, bringing in a lot of good talent. In the first round of the NFL draft, they drafted a left tackle, Jedrick Wills, who should replace the retired Joe Thomas. Again, Joe Thomas retired a few seasons ago. They've been struggling to fill in that void. I think that's what this pick aims to do, is replace Joe Thomas. They signed tight end Austin Hooper from the Atlanta Falcons and made him the highest paid tight end in NFL history. I don't think that Austin Hooper really deserved that kind of money. I think that belongs to George Kittle, who will sign sometime soon, I believe. But for the time being, Austin Hooper is the highest paid tight end on the Cleveland Browns, which really doesn't make a whole lot of sense either, considering they had former first-round pick David Njoku still on the team. So it's curious to see what they're going to do with them. They brought in safety Carl Joseph after Demarius Randall took off. Carl Joseph comes over from the Raiders. He's a decent safety, has some good skills, so I think he'll fit right in. The last thing that the Browns did that really will help them solidify what it is that they're doing on the offensive side is they signed offensive tackle Jake Conklin from the Tennessee Titans. Okay, he's an all-pro, Pro Bowl offensive tackle that I think will do tremendous things, will really help Baker Mayfield, will block very well for them. So they have 2 new offensive tackles. Again, Jedrick Wills, who they drafted in the first round, and they brought in Jack Conklin via free agency. So a lot of good moves if you're the Browns. Like I said, I'm expecting big things from the Browns this season. So taking a look at the Cleveland Browns' schedule, week 1, they travel to Baltimore and get the upset win that they need to really feel good about their season, and they beat the Ravens. Week 2, they host the Cincinnati Bengals on Thursday Night Football. And while home teams usually always have an advantage in this, and they win this game as well. Week 3, they host the Washington Redskins, and they win this game as well. So, wow, what did you know? The Cleveland Browns start out with a record of 3 wins and 0 losses. They're feeling really good about this before they go on a bit of a slide and lose 3 of their next 4 games. Week 4, they travel to Dallas, and they will lose against the Cowboys. Week 5, they host the Indianapolis Colts, and they lose this game as well. Week 6, they travel to Pittsburgh and win this game. In Week 7, they travel to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals, and they lose that game as well. So after their hot start of 3-0, they're now sitting at 4 wins and 3 losses, 7 weeks into the season. Week 8, they host the Las Vegas Raiders. The Las Vegas Raiders. And they win this game as well. Heading into their bye week, they're sitting at a record of 5 wins and 3 losses, literally sitting there neck and neck with the Pittsburgh Steelers. It all depends on how they finish out their season. Finishing out their season, I have them hosting the Houston Texans and losing that game, hosting the Philadelphia Eagles in Week 11 and winning that game, traveling to Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars and winning that game. So right now, sitting at a record of 7 wins and 4 losses. traveling to Tennessee to take on the Titans and losing 7-5, hosting the Baltimore Ravens on Monday Night Football and losing that game against the Ravens, dropping them to a record of 7 wins and 6 losses. It's all going to come down to these last few weeks for the Browns, and ultimately, I do not think they'll get the job done. Week 15, traveling to New York, I have them losing to the Giants. The following week, Week 16, traveling to New York again to take on the Jets, winning that game, moving to a record of 8 wins and 7 losses. Again, this last week, Week 17, will probably determine a wild card spot between the Steelers and the Browns. And ultimately, I have the Steelers winning that game and the Browns losing, dropping them to a record of 8 wins and 8 losses. So I think the Browns will be a very competitive team. I expect a big bounce back season from Baker Mayfield, but I do not think that they'll do quite enough to get the job done to get them into the playoffs. Okay. I'm expecting big things from Baker. I'm expecting a big season from Odell Beckham Jr. I'm expecting a big season from Jarvis Landry, Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, from all of their offensive playmakers, which is ultimately they will fall a little bit short and miss the playoffs again for, I don't know, the 49th season in a row. Just kidding about that. So this brings us to the last team in the AFC North, the Cincinnati Bengals. I am very high on the Bengals as well. Not to say that they're going to actually have a good season or make it to the playoffs, but I think that they're going to be a decently good team. Of course, out goes Andy Dalton, their incumbent quarterback. He is now a backup quarterback in Dallas to Dak Prescott. But in comes quarterback Joe Burrow from LSU, who sets the NCAA record for most touchdowns in a season, most passing yards in a single season. Okay, probably the most prolific quarterback season we have ever seen at the collegiate level. He capped it off with the undefeated season, winning the NCAA playoff championship. So I think Joe Burrow is going to be an okay quarterback. I'm not concerned about how he's going to perform this year. It doesn't really matter to me how he performs, so long as he's consistent. Whatever that looks like, maybe it's 20 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. I'm happy with that. I think that's a successful season. If he does better, 25 touchdowns and 15 interceptions, hey, I'm still good with that. Okay, I just want to see consistent play from him. And I think they'll be okay. I think the Bengals team really last year was a good team. Just they got a lot of bad breaks. I don't think Andy Dalton's a bad quarterback. I think he should be a starting quarterback in this league. AJ Green, their all-pro Pro Bowl wide receiver, is going to return this year after missing all of last season, and with a lot of trade rumors surrounding him. Ultimately, he re-upped with the Bengals, signed his franchise tag, and so he's back with the Bengals. I think that'll be a big help to Joe Burrow. In addition to AJ Green, they also selected wide receiver T. Higgins out of Clemson with the second-round pick. They brought in cornerback Trey Waynes and defensive tackle DJ Reader in the offseason. I think both of those moves will help them, and again, make them a better team this year. So now looking at their schedule, Week 1, they host the LA Chargers in Cincinnati in Ohio, and they start the season off with a victory. Okay, they're going to feel good about themselves. It's going to be a good win. Everyone's going to be happy in Cincinnati. Week 2, they travel to Cleveland to take on the Browns on Thursday Night Football, and they drop that game. Week 3, they travel to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles, and they win that game. So 3 weeks in, I have them at a record of 2 wins and 1 loss. Not too bad for the team that finished with only 2 wins all of last season, before ultimately dropping 4 out of the next 5 games. They host the Jacksonville Jaguars in Week 4, and they lose that game. Week 5, they travel to Baltimore to take on the Ravens, and they lose that game. Week 6, they travel to Indianapolis to take on the Colts, and they lose that game. Week 7, they host the Cleveland Browns, and they win against the Browns, who we were just talking about. And the following week, they take on the Tennessee Titans, and they drop that game to the Titans heading into their bye week. So heading into the bye week, I have them sitting there with a record of 3 wins and 5 losses. It started out promising. It's not going to finish as promising as it started. But again, it's an improvement. You have your rookie quarterback, your future quarterback of the team. So I don't think you're in a bad spot. Like I said, I don't think the Bengals are going to be fighting for a playoff spot, but they're going to be a lot more of a competitive team. After the bye week, they drop the next 2 games at Pittsburgh and at Washington Redskins. They lose both of those games to drop to a record of 3 wins and 7 losses. The following week, they host the New York Giants, and they win that game. The following week, they travel to Miami to hopefully have a rookie quarterback showdown between Tua Tagovailoa and Joe Burrow. If it's not Tua Tagovailoa, it's going to be Ryan Fitzpatrick. Either way, it doesn't matter. I have the Bengals winning this game against the Dolphins, improving to a record of 5 wins and 7 losses. In week 14, they host the Dallas Cowboys, and they lose this game, moving to a record of 5 wins and 8 losses. The following week, they host the Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday Night Football, and they capture a win here as well, their last win of the season, moving them to a record of 6 wins and 8 losses before dropping the next 2 games at Houston and home to Baltimore, finishing with a record of 6 wins and 10 losses. Now, if you're a Bengals fan, if you're a true Bengals fan, you've got to be happy. You've got to feel good about this season. You go from a record of 2 wins and 14 losses to 6 wins and 10 losses. That's definite improvement. That's the kind of jump that you want to see. And the hope that the following season after this one will be when you guys can return to the playoffs and start to build that championship caliber team that you guys are aiming for. So all in all, I have the Ravens finishing first in the division, the Steelers finishing second with a record of 9 wins and 7 losses, the Browns finishing third with a record of 8 wins and 8 losses, and the Bengals finishing fourth with a record of 6 wins and 10 losses. What do you guys think? Anybody agree with my picks? Anybody disagree? Does any one of my picks stand out to you guys? Let me know what you guys think. Drop some comments below. And this ends another episode of the Randall Handles Football Podcast. Thank you guys for listening, and I will see you next time.
I don't care who you play, whether it's a high school team, a junior college team, a college team, much less an NFL team. When you turn the ball over 5 times, 4 interceptions, 1 for a touchdown, 3 others in field position to set up touchdowns, you ain't gonna beat anybody I just talked about. Anybody. All right? And that was a disgraceful performance, in my opinion. We threw that game. We gave it away by doing that. We gave them the friggin' game. In my opinion, that sucked. What's that? Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.